The trolley problem is a moral and ethical thought experiment that has existed in some form or another all throughout history. The original posit could be explained as follows. A runaway trolley is barreling towards 5 people on a track. Since this theory depicts violence against people, we've been advised by the Wilcox administration to not use humans for these problems and instead use penguins. You are standing next to a lever. If you pull this lever, the trolley will change tracks and hit only one penguin, depicted here. If you don't pull this lever, the train will continue on its predestined track, killing the 5 penguins. The question is, which option is more ethical? Is it more ethical to not pull the lever at all and let fate decide, or is it better to pull the lever in an attempt to minimize casualties? Most people, you ask, would say it's much more ethical to pull the lever, and generally, throughout humanity, we have agreed that mitigating disasters is most valuable. This is called a utilitarian approach. Utilitarianism is a consequentialist framework that posits the morality of an action is determined by the consequences and the impact more than the intent. Another example of a consequentialist approach is Machiavellianism, which heavily values the ends over the means. Through a consequentialist lens, it is always better to kill the least amount of people in these problems. On the other hand of the spectrum, a Kantian approach is a deontological approach, which means that the intent is much more important than the impact. Through a Kantian lens, it is strictly unethical to pull the lever in the trolley problem, because you inherently are valuing one worker's life as a means to an end, which strictly contradicts the principles of Kantianism. Through a series of surveys, philosophers and ethicists have determined that about 90% of people would choose to pull the lever. But does that mean that utilitarianism is the morally correct or even intrinsically human framework? Not necessarily. Let's look at another variant of the problem. This variant of the trolley problem depicts the same conundrum, but instead of a lever, you are standing on top of a bridge next to a fat penguin. A runaway trolley is heading towards 5 penguins, and you can assume that the only way to stop it is to push the fat penguin over the bridge. Would you push him? As we learned earlier, the utilitarian approach would be to push the big penguin over the edge, stopping the train, and saving the most amount of penguins possible, valuing the what over the how. And the Kantian approach would be not to push the penguin over and allow the train to hit the 5 penguins, valuing the how over the what. According to similar surveys that have been conducted, a majority of people who would have pulled the lever in problem 1 would not push the man in problem 2. So now, with a more personalized element to the problem, a majority of people would opt to follow the Kantian approach over a utilitarian approach, noting that context is incredibly important. Now, for the consequentialists that may be watching, I want you to imagine that the fat penguin catches on to what's about to happen and begins begging for his life.
Wait, please don't kill me, please don't do this. I have a family, I have children. Look at them. 2 little boys and 1 girl. Marcus, Ellen, and Will. Please, what will happen one day if their dad doesn't come home? They'll be broken.
Some utilitarians might stick by their framework and push the penguin no matter what, and some utilitarians will weigh the outcome of not feeling guilty versus being radically utilitarian, or even see the penguin's family as victims in the equation, thus opting to not push him. Before we move on, is there a framework that you can think of that goes against both Kantianism and utilitarianism in this context? I'll give you a hint. It was already mentioned earlier. If you mentioned Machiavellianism, you'd be correct. A Machiavellianist strictly believes that the ends always justify the means, and no matter what steps are taken, they are ethical and justified so long as they are self-serving. This includes any and all actions, like deception, violence, and extortion. Let's look at what a Machiavellianist would do in this scenario.
What will happen one day if their dad doesn't come home? They'll be broken. Think of my kids, please, I'm begging you. There's no need for this, you don't have to do this.
Shut the fuck up!
What?
Do you care about your family? Do you want them to see you again? How much money is worth you seeing them again? How much money would you give me for the lives of those 5 fucking penguins?
What?
I'm sorry. Are you not caught up? How much money are you willing to give me to not throw you off this bridge and save those 5 people?
I have $50.
Do you have Venmo?
What?
I don't mean to sound like Samuel L. Jackson, but I swear to God, if you ask what again, I will toss you off this bridge right now.
Yes,
Send me $5,000 and you'll live.
I
Do you want to see them again or not? Because So help me God, if I throw you off this bridge, I will be lauded as a hero for stopping this train. 5,000 now. It's at Daddy Jet Steve 55. Send it! Good. Now give me another 50 for being a little bitch. Excellent. Good doing business with you.
As we can see, a Machiavellian approach values the utility of self-gain above all else in ethics. The more money that is extorted, the more ethical he is. The Machiavellian has successfully extorted the money from the penguin and then killed him so as not to leave a witness. This follows Machiavellianism quite strictly. As Machiavelli once stated, if an injury has to be done to a man, it should be so severe that his vengeance need not be feared. Unfortunately, the assumption that the body would stop the train was a false assumption about the problem. Here we can see both the things that work and don't work about a strict utilitarian lens. To expand upon this, let's look at another example. Here is another variant of the trolley problem. In this variant, a similar circumstance occurs with a lever. However, if you run over the 5 people, the trolley will do an incredibly sick loop-de-loop, which will most likely go viral on TikTok. You will get tons of clout and attention on the internet. We already know what a utilitarian, a Kantian, and a Machiavellian would do in this scenario, but what about a hedonist? A hedonist lens values pleasure and happiness, often construed as short-term satisfaction above all else. A hedonist would most definitely not pull the lever and reap the rewards, not only seeing a sick-as-fuck trolley loop-de-loop, but also they would go viral on TikTok and get millions of views. I mean, think about all that you can do with that clout. You could get a sponsorship, you could have a yacht, you could have a threesome, you could sleep on a bed of money. No, you could have a threesome on a bed of money on the deck of a yacht. Get the camera out! Call the New York Times, tell them that you have their new front page. As a matter of fact, fuck that! Call the president. Tell him that you're the next Messiah. Yeah, you're God. This is a trolley doing a loop-de-loop, and you're the second coming of Christ. You missed it. You missed the loop-de-loop. You missed your shot at fame and fortune. Here we can see the nihilist lens at its finest. Who cares about the trolley? You missed your shot. It doesn't matter, really. It doesn't matter at all. We're all going to die someday, just like those penguins. No matter what we do, what we create, it's going to be consumed by the sun, burnt to a crisp, by the cold, uncaring darkness of space. It's inevitable. Why live today? None of it matters, really. You could die today and you'd likely be forgotten about in less than a century. How long does it take for you to forget what people's faces look like? Can you picture the face or name of your great-great-grandfather? Probably not. What happens then? What happens when that's you? When the last person who remembered you is gone? What was it all for? All this bloodshed, all of these tears. I envy those laying down on the tracks. I mourn for those that the trolley spared. The cold, uncaring trolley of life. Okay, I guess we can move on to the next problem. Pictured here, we have a bit more of an existentialist approach to the trolley problem. Really, no matter what is done, everyone here will die, either someday in the future or because of this trolley. As you can see, the trolley goes in a loop, so no matter what you do with the lever, everyone here will die. Do you pull it in an attempt to feel some sort of agency in a world where you ultimately have none? Or do you accept that the lives of these innocent people are out of your hands? Would you walk out onto the track? What would you do? See, people think they make choices, but they don't. All of the important choices have already been made for them. Sure, they can choose to turn left or right, but the tracks have already been built.
Mr. Man, put your hands where I can see them. You're under arrest for the vehicular manslaughter of 10 innocent people.